Hello? How's it going?
How are we doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well.
Good to hear. Uh,
Awesome. So, have you done like a VOD review or anything like that? Like OPgg review or anything like that before?
Not really, no.
Okay, no problem. No problem. So, I guess first things first, I figured I'd take a look over your OPgg just to get a sense of like what you're doing, like what
Yeah,
you're playing and stuff.
yeah,
Uh,
sure. I'm a Thresh main, basically.
okay, awesome. I think that's the one that I saw. Is that your user?
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
Okay, awesome. It's kind of funny, like you being a Thresh player, because so I am a support player. I've been a
Yeah,
support player for a super long time, and so I think I
okay.
know my way around the role reasonably well. But Thresh is actually like the one champ I don't play. I actually banned Thresh in like almost all my games because I think it's too aggressive.
Really,
Yeah.
it is really a powerful champion, right?
Mm-hmm. But definitely like a perfectly fine champ to be playing. Um, so do you play like support only, or do you like fill other roles also?
I've played League for like a long time. I've played maybe since like season one. I don't actually remember because I was like 12 or something.
Yeah.
But I started playing seriously like season, I don't know, four maybe, something like that.
Okay.
Or like five, six, I don't know. But yeah, I've played my fair share of like AD, and I've played also a bit of top lane.
Okay.
There was a season where I mained Tryndamere top. I
Mm-hmm.
got to diamond as well. But yeah,
Nice.
that's that. So
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So that's kind of the same situation that I'm actually in too. Like I've been playing since way back when, like season one. And then I recently, not recently, but probably around season three, season four, started playing. I can link you my OPGG too, just in case you're
yeah, sure.
curious. So I'm sitting right around D2 right now. I
Let's
peaked
see, let's
last season
see.
D1.
Oh, Leona player. Do you main Leona? Or
Uh, I think I
not
play
really?
whatever's in the meta usually.
Okay, okay.
So that was
Is
Leona for
Rakan
the last
good?
couple seasons. People say that my Rakan is like the Clash team I play on says like my Rakan is the best champ that I play. But I think right
Mm,
now I'm playing Rakan, Yumi, and that's probably the two main. And then like Leona and Nautilus are fine. But
yeah, fair.
I guess like so the first thing that I kind of like to cover is just so most people I do reviews for is like usually their champ pools like they don't have a sense of like what champs they're playing in what situations and like because I think that's a big thing for support is like the support role is kind of like it's like you're babysitting a lot of puppies or whatever or like it's like trying to wrangle cats. It's like your teammates want to pick all these random champs that they play and usually I feel like as support it's really important that you round out your team comp.
So you're saying I should be tailoring to them instead of like just
I
just picking Thresh?
I so that's interesting. So I personally think that's how I pick. So that's why I like
Okay.
to have kind of three champs or something that I feel like I'm really well practiced on. So usually I have like one engaged champ that's like Leona, one like enchanter or like backline champ like Rakan kind of fills that role, and then maybe one
Hmm.
like healer or something. That's kind of like how I usually try to think about it. The interesting thing is I think Thresh is super versatile. I think
Yeah,
Thresh for some
that's the thing. It just fits everywhere because the champion's so like flexible in what it can do, right?
mm-hmm,
You have like so much utility and you have so much engage as well. Disengage
mm-hmm,
it's just kind of like you can do everything.
mm-hmm.
I've linked you my second account, by the way, or like
Okay.
my main rather. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't.
Gotcha.
I haven't played on it much this season,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah. Um, I kind of play Soraka. Yeah, because Soraka's like really impressive. I think she's one of the strongest early game champions, and I play a bit of Leon as well.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's like usually what I lead off with because you know a lot of people, especially if they've just started playing ranked or like maybe are a little bit lower ranked, because obviously you being like D4 around is already like really high elo, but a lot of people who like might be silver and gold don't have that sense of like what types of champs they should be playing in what situation.
Honestly, right. I think if you're like playing in silver and gold, you can play whatever you want,
Oh,
kind of, because it's like
absolutely.
silver and gold,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
So But yeah, I get what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. So that's like usually the first thing that can be pulled from an OPgg. I think that just the second part of that I would add is like after putting that in mind, it's like, oh, try to fit your team comp with champs. But like the most important thing is like the champs you are playing. Like if
See,
you
I'm
don't
really
play,
bad at like understanding team comps, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of obvious once the team comp is like finished, right? Like once you're done drafting and you
mm-hmm,
can tell like, oh, we have good engage or we have good disengage or we have no engage, whatever.
mm-hmm.
But when we're like in champ select, I'm not that confident like reading the team comp and like reading our team conditions, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing.
I think it kind of changes a little bit with the meta. People are playing tanks in the top lane now, but what I find is the most common occurrence is like every other player on my team. So we'll play AD carry, like a mage, ADC in mid lane, and then like a top lane and jungler will want to play carry champs. That's just like a very common thing. So like usually that's why I find that I have so many Leona games because I just feel like we don't have a tank and I need to pick a tank out of support role. Otherwise, our team won't have a tank.
That's fair enough. Have you? I guess you don't play Thresh, but there's this build going around where they go Stoneplate
Oh yeah.
into like
Mm-hmm.
Righteous Glory or what's it called? The speed up item. Fucking Shurelius, yeah,
Aurelius, yeah.
yeah, something like that. So if I want to, I can feel like that role for my
Mm-hmm.
team if
I
there's no tank.
I think it's been the meta for at least the last few months where Leona and Nautilus are in every single game where it's like the stone plate rush is like the go-to
Yeah,
lane.
they just rush it. Yeah, I know, I've seen it.
Yeah. But okay, so and then like the last thing I'll say on champ pool is like at the end of the day, it's a game and like the more we play, the better we're gonna get at League, as long as like you're trying to improve and not just playing mindlessly. So I say like if you just enjoy the champ, forget all the trying to fit the team comp, forget like the meta, just like play the champs that you enjoy. And if you're enjoying playing Thresh and
Yeah,
Nautilus as
right.
well,
Fair enough.
that's all you can do, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. So do you have a VOD that we could hop
I
into?
haven't got a VOD right, but I can download a game and we can
Okay,
just
no problem.
hop into a game if you want right now.
Yeah.
Do you want to see a game where I'm like hard smurfing them then, or do you want to see a game where
It's
we
totally
kind
your
of
call. It's totally your call. I'm just gonna tentatively. So let's say we started at roughly 3, and I'm gonna try to cut it to like an hour-ish, like at 4, just
okay,
because a lot of times I
sure,
I
sure,
spend too much time and I get carried away, and
sure.
I just don't want to take up too much time. But yeah, maybe it's totally your call whether you want to see a good game or a bad game. Usually I find that the games that are kind of like in the middle, where it's like a close game, where you've done good things and you've done poor things, are like the helpful games because you can figure out like
Um,
both.
I actually remember inting in a game. Well, not inting, but like not playing to my standards, which
Mm-hmm.
is smurfing on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a game like that. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to have a look, it's the 08 game.
Okay, sure.
It's the
Before we jump into it, I guess
yeah.
this is something I forgot to do, but like, do you want to just like say in words now or like write out like some things that you think you're like not you need to improve at like game wise, like
Okay,
vision, control,
so
or map movement, or like that type of stuff. Like,
obviously, like map movement's a big thing for supports, right? Because you see in Challenger, you see like the level 3 roams or
mm-hmm,
whatever, and like there's like I'm not actually sure how to like formulate my game plan, right?
mm-hmm,
I try to coordinate with my jungler because I usually do with a jungler.
mm-hmm.
So I usually try to play around him a little bit as well. So you'd see me like leave lane and just ditch my AD, which is not the best, but if it works for me, I mean.
Okay. I'm just writing those things down right now, but yeah. I'm totally listening to what you're saying.
And then I've been like trying to be more mindful in the way I use like my sweepers and just wards in general. Because I find that you sweep at like random spots like often, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like I catch myself and I'd be watching like some Hyla support like fucking Lord Pally or whatever or Joey, and then I'm like, okay, let's sweep, and then he doesn't sweep, and I'm like, why are you not sweeping? Like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So I get that sometimes,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
but other than that,
And
yeah,
and then lane phase, do you usually find like you're doing okay in lane phase?
So laning phase is kind of weird because it's matchup dependent sometimes, and then it's AD dependent sometimes.
Oh yeah, for
Um,
sure, for sure.
I I find that I'm doing okay in most matchups. I struggle a little bit with the bard matchup sometimes. If the bard's like good.
Yeah, Bard's getting a lot of play now. It's
Yeah, I
a pretty
know.
strong
It's
pick.
kind of annoying.
Okay. And then mid to late game, like map movement and team play wise, like obviously it's really hard in solo queue to coordinate sometimes because teammates won't listen and stuff like that. I get all that, but like, how do you feel about like that? Just like, you know,
I feel like pretty confident in the sense that like usually I'm trying to make calls around like Jake spawning and like Harold spawning, and then once we go later into the game, we just go top side and just get vision round Baron and try to make something happen there. Um, I don't feel too bad. Yeah, honestly, I think late games are right. Sometimes I catch myself taking 4v5s, but that's just because I don't know, I'm not paying attention, autopilot, whatever. But I try to be more mindful of what fights I'm taking.
okay, awesome. So just things I've wrote down. I've written down like, oh, so early game lane phase we're usually doing okay. Obviously, like it depends on lane and game to game depends. It seems like late game objectives, map movement and stuff is usually okay too. So it seems like it's kind of in the mid game where we're kind of transitioning between lanes. We're trying to figure out like
I
vision
would
control.
say it's like early game movement, and
Okay.
like one thing I'm trying to do more often now is I'm trying to get my so if I get my support item before their support, right, I would just try to reset as soon as possible
Mm-hmm.
and just go into the enemy jungle and just ward everything and
Mm-hmm.
then just leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I've just started doing like recently, and I think that's working out great.
Okay. Awesome.
But other than that, I'm not too sure. Maybe I'm just hinting. Who knows?
Well, we can hop into a replay right now if you want to pull one of those up.
So it's kind of funny. I've just checked my match history, and Riot's match history is like down,
Mm-hmm.
so I can't actually get up a game. It's kind of
Oh.
interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to do. Um, how'd you get around that? And I don't think OPGG's got any games recorded. Yeah,
Okay.
shit.
You're on EU, right?
Yeah, I
Oh
am.
shoot.
Yeah,
Okay, so I can't even pull up a replay.
yeah.
Well, I can
Shit.
do. Let me think about that for a second.
Maybe I've got old games on like Play TV or something,
Okay.
but that's
Oh yeah,
gonna be
my
obviously
match
quite
history is
old.
down also. Damn, the client really is just kind of
I
messing.
fucking love. Honestly, the last couple of days it's been really bad. Like the server's been like 10k ping, and it's just been unplayable.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, I understand because they're probably getting a lot of like users right now.
Yeah, fair with the virus and everything, but
Exactly.
still,
Well,
it is a bit unfortunate. Yeah, I'm not sure if we can actually do anything. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna have to actually record the game, but I can't even record because I'm playing on like 100 ping, and then it just goes up to like 1k for no reason.
okay. Well, you can always. Well, I mean, I'm assuming match history is not going to be down forever. So, like, sometime later,
Hopefully,
you can grab a
yeah.
replay and like record it then. Um, we can
Let me check.
also.
Let me check my folder. Okay,
Okay,
if
no
I've,
problem, no problem.
if I've got any replays,
We can also talk in
documents.
generalities because
Yeah,
I,
sure,
I
sure.
think that in a lot of respects like individual games like it's useful to find like individual examples of like, oh, that's an obvious mistake, or like, oh, that's something where I can improve on.
Okay, I've got a file. Mute yourself.
Oh, so, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I was just like, wait, what's going on?
Okay, so I'm thinking about so generally speaking, the way I think about the game is our top, our mid, and our AD are stuck in their lanes collecting farm, right? For the majority of the
Sure.
phase.
Yeah.
Like, sure, there's like fighting, 1v1s, they get ganked, whatever. But their main thing is they're stuck in lanes, soaking farm. And I think that the reason that I see jungle and support as the strongest roles early game is because they don't have that responsibility, right? They're free to move
Mm.
over the map pretty much whenever they want. Like, obviously, so jungle has some responsibility, like buffs and objective control and crabs and stuff. And support has some responsibility, like I want to make sure my AD's farming and the lane's in a good space. But like as a support player, like so one thing that you can do in the early game is if there's ever a jungler jungle fight, try to make it to that. I guess like that's something that's very obvious, but I find that that's something that even like moving 5 or 10 seconds faster than the enemy support or something like has a huge impact on like jungle early game. And
Well,
that's
I
something
wish
you
I
can
could show you one of the games.
mm-hmm.
I had this like Shaco game. I think yeah, it was versus a Shaco jungle, and I just ruined that guy's life. I think at some point I was like level 3. I roamed like level 2,
Mm-hmm.
got level 3 from mid. He
Mm-hmm.
was doing his red. He got like solo killed by me or something, and then I got killed. Like I killed him again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like
And
I think it's something I'm doing like too much almost. Do you know what I mean? Like where I'm ditching my lane and then my AD ends up feeding because they're like tilted. I just left the lane.
right.
But it's not like I'm ditching the like. It's not like I leave when the wave's frozen in front of their tower, right? I'm leaving as the wave is coming in, and then my AD is just hitting the wave for no reason, and then they just get killed. They're just like, what are you doing, buddy?
Honestly, you can think about it like so you can think about yourself as chained to the bot lane, except for like when you leave, you're going for a specific purpose, right? So if you
Okay.
identify your specific one purpose is there's a single jungle fight at Crab right now, and you leave, then that's like a 10 or 20 second window that you're gone. That gains an advantage, right? And then like you try to return to the lane as soon as possible. That's how I think about every roam. So generally
So you
speaking,
should be getting out something out of every
yeah,
round,
exactly.
basically.
And like you should be like leaving the lane for a specific purpose that you've identified before you leave the lane. Like you do that one thing
Sure.
and then you try to get back and then you look for your next opportunity. So that's like super obvious when there's a jungle fight, right? Because that's exactly what you're leaving lane to go do. You're trying to go fight the jungler. It's a little less obvious for some things like later in lane phase, like warding routes. I think there's like a few specific warding route patterns that you can do that kind of I think about them as the same thing. It's like a 20 or 25-second mission. That's the one thing you're trying to leave lane for. You're gonna do that one thing and then you're gonna return to lane. Um, I think a very common pattern blue side is to push the lane in with your AD carry. Whenever you have a window, and then I'm sure you know this, but like the common warding patterns are like this ward here and like this ward here.
Yeah.
Or,
Or like
mm-hmm.
the pixel or the one next to the pixel. I rarely ward like wolves or something. That's just not something I do. But often the ward that you get like next to the gump, like
Yeah, I think this one
on the back of the wall. Yeah.
and then this one, because with these two, it's basically like you're trying to work paths, right? So I
Yeah.
think this right side path is really good, and then on this side, if you have a lot of time, this ward right here, if you can like make this path up to here, is usually
Okay.
really really good. Usually there's not enough time to do that, so if you can just walk here and drop one here and here, then that's also really good. But like that'd be like a 10 or 15 second like job that you've just done. Uh, and then you return
Also,
the lane for the
that's
next path.
that's the old Summoner's Rift. I think they need to update the bushes on that one. Yeah.
Oh wait, yeah, this is. I literally just googled but the new map like looks pretty much the same. Just
There was a Rift map or something. There was a map Rift kit. That's what it's called.
okay. Let me actually.
This one. But it's the old one as well. Oh no, it's the new one. Yeah, it's the new one. It's called like Champions in Wars or whatever.
Oh, nice. Try to zoom this in. Oh shit.
Wait, where's the bot line gone? Oh, you've seen. Okay.
I was trying to figure out how to zoom this whole thing in. Oh, there we go. Nice. Okay.
Okay,
So,
good.
oh, this is actually like super useful. So yeah, this is the path I'm talking about. Like, okay, so generally speaking, I think, so everybody likes to flame junglers, but like the jungle dictates like what type of early game it is, right? So I think it's super important, like beginning of the game, to try to track jungle path, and it should be something really simple, just like and like obvious shit that people usually realize, like, oh, I just leashed my jungle red, so he's pathing red to blue to one camp to top side probably, and tracking like, oh, so they leashed bot side, so he's pathing blue to red to one camp to top side. Like even that information, just having that in your head as to like that's how the early game is going to be played is super important.
Yeah, I'm usually like I think I'm getting better at that, especially because I'm doing with my jungler, and then I'm feeding him information, and he's also feeding me info.
That's
I'm like,
also a
where's the
con.
jungler?
Just having
Yeah,
somebody who's, because that's like his whole job, right? Just feeding
yeah.
information like that. That's super helpful. Um,
So I think I'm getting better at that. And
okay.
then it's kind of obvious, like if you see the jungler bot, you should not like try, like you should just not be fighting. Like you see him at Wolves, there's no point like forcing a fight. There's no point like trading. It just doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
But if you see him, it just like I understand how the game kind of like revolves around the jungle, and then you just end up inting if you like play into the jungle.
hmm And then so I think you have a grasp on like most of these ideas because especially being at the level, being at the ELO that you're at, like a lot of these things are kind of straightforward. The thing that then I'll start touching on is like the idea of lane prio, which is something that is maybe a little less obvious, but like I think that in the early game it's super important to just always be trying to fight for lane prio, right? Like there's no
Sure.
situation like people always talk about like, oh my lane's frozen, so it's a perfect gank situation, but
Like well, I think that's like matchup dependent,
mhm,
right? Because
it
if
is.
if say I'm playing Thresh into like Lulu Caitlyn or something, or
Mm-hmm.
like Janna Caitlyn, and I can't get like there's just no way I'm getting lane prio. It's just no like if they're not
Mm-hmm.
like feed like if they're not trolling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting lane prio in that situation. But then after the first like 2 3 waves, or maybe on the fourth wave, then we can maybe like think about going like doing something there.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
it's like
that's certainly true if they're playing the lane correctly. But what I've found is that very often people just
they and yeah, no, I know. I've seen that where they just give you level 2 and then they just get it, end up
mm-hmm.
getting all in and then solo killed and then it's just like the
Mm-hmm.
game's over, right?
So so it's certainly true. Like okay, so if both players are playing correctly, and obviously you're in a losing lane matchup, then you can't really do anything about that. But even just trying to fight for prio can be like super helpful sometimes. Um,
I'm gonna. I'm sorry to interrupt
yeah,
you.
yeah, no problem, no problem.
Like the latest thing that I've been trying to do is something I got on Call JJ stream.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he does this thing where he's always like hovering the max range of like auto attack or like some ability
Oh yep,
that's like really important, right? And so when you always like when you end up hovering that range and you just like stutter back and forth, right?
mm-hmm.
They often like end up clicking into you, and then
Mm-hmm.
you can like go into them, and then they just die,
Mm-hmm.
or this puts like so much pressure on them, or like it alleviates so much pressure
Mm-hmm.
from your ADC that it just makes the game so much like easier to play.
A hundred
So that's
percent.
that's something I'm trying to get better at,
Mm-hmm.
but it's probably one of the like most effective things I'd say that you can do in nine
I
to just play better.
100% agree with that. And like I can dive into that really quickly. Just I want to try to get this last point across, like on this last note.
Mm.
The reason that I'm saying like prio is so important, because so I think that Thresh can actually get decent prio in like a lot in most matchups. It's just a few that like some range supports. Like
So yeah, most range supports. Yeah, if it's like melee, if it's like Leona obviously, or like Nautilus,
mhm,
yeah, or Alistair obviously, like those are champions that are not really champions until like level 3, I'd say.
mhm,
So you can easily get prior there, and then if they end up feeding, well, that's on them.
mhm. And
But
the
continue.
reason that I think prio is so important is because basically the only time you ever want to freeze is if like the map's in a perfect state. And the vast majority of the time the map's not going to be in a perfect state. And so you getting prio like lets you like influence the map like in one little way,
Okay,
right?
but would you get prior knowing that you're gonna draw jungle like pressure
Yeah.
if
So
you
mhm,
if you don't have flash, right? Then you're playing into like Nautilus and say they
mhm,
have flash, and so like one of you is certainly dying,
mhm.
or like most certainly dying. Would you still draw prior,
So my so
or
basically
would you just
there are two
go get
missions.
prior shove and then go ward?
Yeah. So there's kind of two like kind of missions that I think about early game that are my like out of lane responsibilities as a support. So my in lane
Mm.
responsibilities is fine. It's like, oh, my AD's farming, like maybe I'm trying to kill him, maybe I'm trying to fight him, whatever. Like that's all laning stuff. And then in the back of my mind, I have two responsibilities. That's A, I'm trying to it's like my jungler responsibilities. So I'm trying to help my jungler and like fight the enemy jungler. And then my other responsibility is like vision. So like those two responsibilities are like what I think are my 10 to 15 second missions, right? And that's why
Okay.
that's what getting prio is turning into. So usually, it's the third wave and the fourth wave prio in the game that's like the most important because that's the crab timing. And
Okay.
so a lot of and of course this is my own experience too. So everyone's games are different. But what I found a lot of times is so if enemy jungler starts red and they're pathing bot, they're gonna be at this crab or at least thinking about
Yeah.
this crab between three
Yeah.
minutes between third wave and fourth wave, which is 3 minutes to 3:30 somewhere around there. So if I have prio at that time, then very often, especially on Thresh, you can just showing your face on the jungler if you have prio and they're thinking about crab can make
They
them
can
back
just
off.
scare them away. Yeah.
Exactly. Or if your jungler's there, then that's like a winning. If and they take the crab with you, then this jungler is like super fucked. So it's like a small movement like that. That's like a 10-second investment from support. That would be like a winning jungle matchup. And then the second job that I try to take care of is a little bit later, like post level 5 or level 6, when you start to have either a trinket charge or maybe your ward items coming in. And then that 10 to 15-second job should always be vision. So basically, your lane is never safe until you have full jungle vision. And so you want to try to push prio whenever you have the opportunity because if the lane's up here, you have 10 to 15 seconds where you can back ping your AD and take like a ward here or a ward here depending on
Okay.
vision and stuff.
One thing I like end up running into quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
is when like say I've got like I've got like fucking, let me think, like a Victor or something, right? And they've
Mm-hmm.
got talent, and then Victor gets like somehow Victor ends up shoved. Maybe Victor's not the greatest example, but basically my mid laner is like shoved and he's
Mm-hmm.
got no prio.
Mm-hmm.
So then the mid laner can roam like through my jungle,
Oh, for sure, for sure.
and that I'm not sure how to like do like react with that. I usually if that's happening, I try to get a pink on the back of red,
Mm-hmm.
right, and I hope to like see them that way, and then maybe like pink like get a ward down where the scuttle is,
Mm-hmm.
like
So
opposite of Drake.
the biggest point for this is getting red control ward here or here. And usually,
Mm,
especially if you're in a losing matchup, this pixel is the easiest to control. If you're in a super
okay,
losing matchup, then at worst case scenario, a
is that
red
bush there?
here
Okay,
is sufficient. Um, because basically, like, so what are the paths that the mid laner can take? He can take this path, which hopefully you're covering with this job that you've taken.
yeah,
He can take this path, which is really obvious to river. So your jungler or mid laner should be trying to help you ward here. So usually this is kind of a harder roam path, um, because it'll just be over vision. Or he can take this path, which is if their mid laner can take this path and gank bot, then your mid jungle is getting super fucked anyways. But that would be like the vision to cover it, right? Because that's all you can do. You try to roam
okay.
this
And
path.
do you like is there times where you just end up roaming mid lane or just sit in
Oh,
mid lane?
absolutely, absolutely.
Because I do that sometimes where I'm
Mm-hmm.
just sat like I'm gonna ping the mid lane bush from the river,
Mm-hmm.
right, the one you just pointed out,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just sit inside. I'll just stay there. And obviously in trash, it's kind of difficult to do that because the
Mm-hmm.
minion dies, and then they see the soul, and then like, oh shit. But like, if I've got like nothing to buy or if I've got nothing to do, my AD's like resetting or something, I'll just roam mid and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go back.
And yeah, so I mean, I hate to turn the game into like packaged, like follow this trick and you'll win, like that type of stuff. But in terms of, so I think about that as like another job that I can do. But like I try to think about it all as it depends on like how you're roaming. So if you're roaming because you just got this like 10 to 15-second window off of a single wave, then you can maybe roam mid, but every second you're roaming mid is the second that your AD is losing CS or like losing lane prio bot side, which is perfectly fine. But like a easier roam window I find is, and this happens almost every single game. But after the very first AD back, usually you don't have support back gold, or it depends how the backs go. But usually, if you push into tower and your AD gets a back, then that's like a great ward in mid roam window. And I
Mm.
find that happens almost every single game. Like level 4 or 5, right at the first AD back, you can roam mid just because their bot
Because
is
you
fully
don't have a
controlled.
thousand gold because they nerfed Abby, mobbies.
Exactly.
And you just cry in support. You're like, what the fuck, man? I'm missing 50 gold. What is this?
And regarding the timing, so like I would never I personally, so a lot of people are super patient and can like recognize windows. Like I know this gank will work for sure. But I find that it's all about like trying to be efficient with your time. So even sitting like mid for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds can be good, but like the longer you sit, you want to be aware of like because you're applying pressure mid at the cost of
Yeah,
the
obviously I'm not. Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense. It
yeah,
does make sense. It's just like if my AD's just backed and then they're coming back to lane, I'll try to
mhm.
mash them back. Yeah, sure.
But
And then
that can also be a good
how would
thing.
you approach Drakes in the
Oh,
current meta?
that's a good question. So, oh, and then the last thing I'll touch, but just because I think it's on the same note, is like how you're going back to base. So usually recall
I
it's
always just walk, I
mhm.
recall, and then you just path towards the pixel bush. It's
Yeah,
just the simplest thing to do.
it's so simple and it's
No one does
it's
it. I
such a
know.
game changer because like
It just allows you to get there so much quicker.
if you time yourself like taking this path and then even walking bot, like maybe you lose 5 seconds or 10 seconds. It's not the end of the world. But like during that window, like every mid fight and every jungle fight, like you're there for, which is such a game changer. But it seems like you already know that, so I'm not gonna stress that too much.
Okay.
Okay, so for dragon fights, so people do dragons way more frequently now because they're easier to take, right? And because junglers like are kind of obsessed with dragons now, which is good. Like it's a good objective to take. I think the easiest setup is like you can think about dragon as it's almost free if you've done your two jobs, which are first your jungle matchup versus their jungle matchup, like if you try to help with the fight or something like that. But
Hmm.
usually jungle comes off the freeze dragons come off of your second job, which is if you have vision control in this quadrant or this quadrant, depending on which side you're playing. That's like the setup to dragon, and then second, it's once you push the enemy out of lane. So basically,
If
the
you're red side,
mhm.
where are you gonna ward usually? Because my red
Oh,
ward
that's a great
vision, I
question
would say,
too.
it's not
Yeah,
that great.
yeah.
I ward the Krugs, like the bush bit,
So
like next to the
I
Krugs.
found that my AD will always like the ADs never want to venture far. They always drop their trinket here or here, which is fine. It's like shallow vision. But once you get prio, the two most reliable wards I used to try to go all the way here and do red trinket here and here.
If I do that, I often find myself inting to like if the jungler shows up or something.
So it's super hard, right? Because it's about identifying windows when you can walk this deep.
Yeah, so you have to know like junglers on like the opposite side, or
Mhm.
you have prior mid lane or something like that.
Usually it depends on the champions you're playing, but usually, even if you find a jungler 1v1, then he won't be able to kill you. Especially on Thresh, where you have some degree of self peel, just because junglers are unsure if, like, you can imagine, like, from their perspective, if a support is walking into my jungle, then, like, then I don't know who's behind him, because it's like supposedly this area is dark. So
Mm,
usually it's a little more safe than you might think, but that's only as long as this is a one-on-one matchup, right? So like if you're spotted, then obviously their support's gonna instant roam, and that's when it gets dangerous. But
yeah.
as long as it's 1v1, then usually you're fine. But the path that I do most commonly is yellow trinket here. If I have a pink here, and then depending on what the lane state is, then I'll try to take this path and get this yellow. But that's like really greedy, and I'll only do that if my AD is recalled. Um,
Have you ever done the one like the one behind the Drake? Like if you go
oh, this
next to the
one.
Drake,
Oh,
yeah, this
that's
one.
so that's a good ward. But in terms of path, so that would be like if I don't have much lane prio or like their jungler and mid laners ahead. It's basically I do that when this is too risky. When this is like no longer like either I'm losing bot really hard and
Okay,
I'll never be able to walk in here, or there's just a jungle matchup that's just too hard. And so that's
okay,
a really good ward too. But the reason that
okay.
this isn't as good is because obviously like the deeper your vision is, the better, right? Because you see more of the jungle.
Mm,
But this is good because it sees like these three paths, which is super important.
hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Would you play your Drake or Herald like currently
It depends.
on the team comps or?
It it depends on how the game is going, but I would say in solo queue, it's really hard to successfully coordinate Herald takes from the bot side of the map. That's my personal opinion. Some people may know how to do it better, but I think it's just way easier to set up good dragon plays.
Okay, okay. And then once you go into like mid game,
Hmm.
what's your kind of like goal with vision, right? Like, what are
Oh,
you looking to do?
that's a good
Because
question.
usually for me it's just like I'm gonna ward like one of the like, I'm gonna put some wards down like deep wards in the jungle and then
Hmm.
like that's it. Or like I know say mid towers down, say the first tier towers down
Hmm.
on mid, yeah. But then we've still got the bot tower up, and then you kind of like draw a straight line between the towers, and then you try to like ward around that area, if that makes sense, right?
So this can potentially get kind of crazy, but I'll keep it kind of simple. Like, so it always depends on what the game state is, but like your vision should always be like trying to set up, like it should be a purpose to the vision, right? Like you're not
Yeah,
just trying
yeah,
to light up a dark spot of the map just because it's dark.
sure.
It should be like with the next objective in mind. And I think that that is going to be really useful now because there's so many objectives now because dragons spawn faster and rifts spawn twice. So
Okay.
basically, I'll pick one objective. Usually it's like you check the timer and whatever one's coming up faster, like oh dragons in 240.
I usually go if it's like 150 or something. I'm gonna go ward,
Mm-hmm.
something like that, or like 2 minutes.
I would say even if it's not coming up yet, like let's say the nearest objective is like dragons only in like 350 or it's like a long way away, then either your play then is you have to identify like which tower you're trying to pressure, like which half of the map you're trying to pressure, or like even if your next play isn't for another 4 minutes at dragon, then if you know that's the next play, then you should be trying to win that quadrant of the map ahead of like dragon, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
sure.
so on blue side, the most common, I think the single most important word is you want to try to get mid lane vision as deep as possible, as often as possible.
I usually go so if you go like kind of north from
Mm-hmm.
there, like the one, yeah, right there.
Uh-huh.
I find that to be a pretty effective ward, like
This
right
is
there.
this is super good. Basically, and this is something that I think usually diamond players like already understand, but having vision just somewhere down mid lane as deep as possible, the deeper the better, is so important.
Yeah, or if you like take tower, you just plop a ward down like
Exactly.
where the tower is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the moment this tower drops, then you should be trying to drop a ward, keep a ward here up 24/7 the rest of the game. That's like your number one priority.
Because
That's
you can
my
see
number
them
one
coming in.
priority at least.
Okay, so one thing I kind of struggle with, and it's just not me, but it's like it's getting to be, it's like explaining to people kind of, it's like in my head, right? If you want to take an objective, you're meant to actually push the wave, so you get vision with the wave, and they have to respond, and then you just go and do the objective with all the vision you've got. But in
Yeah.
solo queue, what ends up happening is I'm gonna ward around the map, and then
Yep.
we're gonna go to the objective, and then we just give them mid prior, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Like, what are we doing?
I love that you said that because that's like the thing that triggers me the most about like my Clash team. So I'm like the highest yellow player in my Clash team, and I think it's something that support players get that other people just don't get, like how to approach objectives. But basically, so the answer is you should always be going through mid, right? It's
Right.
easy if you're like duo with like an AD or a mid laner who actually has wave control, who can shove that wave. But the reason you always want to, and this is kind of I guess more for like a flex team or for a Clash team, to approach objectives, you always want to approach mid, through mid, because I mean, and you know why? Because they have to deal with the mid wave, and then you get first move on the objective. But the way to try to
Okay.
like force that is basically you want your number one vision, and then you want your number two vision somewhere in their jungle on the side of the objective, and then you have to try to say let's approach through mid or like something like that.
Okay, so my probably my biggest weakness, and it's not like it's just my gap of knowledge, right? Would be, I would say, like losing what I'm losing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, how do I not lose immediately? Like the thing I see in like Challenger is like they're gonna be losing, right? But they lose like kind of like gracefully, if that
Yeah,
makes sense, right? Where like in like Diamond, you lose and then you just fucking lose.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it. You're just lost.
Yeah.
How do you not lose? Obviously, like the obvious answer would be like take like 4v3s, take good fights with like good vision, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it just like it feels like I'm always playing a man down sometimes, you know. So how do I like get? And obviously that's super situational, and you can't really answer that. But like, how do I not lose like immediately? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing is so it's actually kind of hard to take towers, just like objectively speaking. It's harder than people think to take towers, and the easiest way is through Rift. So the point is like if you're in a losing situation where you're losing like full map pressure, it doesn't actually matter. It matters a little bit, but it doesn't really matter like a lot. So basically like the win con. So the reason that Riot's push so much objectives and like they've buffed Rift and they've made Dragon spawn so frequently is because without these objectives, it's like too hard. It's too easy to stall out. You know what I mean? For the losing team, like it's not that hard to
Mm-mm.
play as the losing team,
Yeah,
but
there's nothing to like make them get out of
exactly.
like,
But what
yeah.
what really starts to get losing teams like even further behind is pretty much when people start getting caught. And
Yeah, that's the thing. How do I like prevent that? Is it just vision or
it's 100% vision, and I mean there's also like so you can't really stop people from dying sometimes. But
obviously you can stop people from running it down if they
mhm,
really want to run it down, but like, how can I help, you know?
mhm. So like the way you help is like 100% with vision control, and like it's kind of like a probability play, right? Like if you start making a habit of like keeping certain quadrants warded, then over time, like as you play like 10 games or 20 games or 50 games, like you'll have less of these, your teammates getting caught out. So and then it depends on every situation, right? But generally speaking, if you're losing, like you're getting shoved in, like your team's losing, then you want to like still the mid lane thing is the biggest thing. Like you want to try to keep that vision as deep as possible, as often as possible, and then
Okay.
I mean I go with the same idea. Like you can see all the timers in the map. You know what objective. You try to figure out what objective the enemy is playing for, and you try to keep vision on that side as much as possible, and at least like because usually you have a strong side of the map and then a weak side of the map. Usually the
Mm.
weak side is the side that dies if there's no time, if there's a lot of time left before the objective, and then if the objective is coming up like a minute or like a minute 30, then usually the strong side is the side that dies. So it's kind of like you want to try to play your vision with that in mind, and like think about like where the enemy is going to be playing towards, so that you can either like spam ping to be careful in that area, or you can like try to ward around that area.
Okay. And then I kind of get that
I
for
don't know if that
sure.
makes sense.
Yeah, kind of, because like they're going to be playing around the like they're going to be preparing for the objective because they're strong and they want to get it, so they're going to be like on that side of the map. So
I
if
think
they,
usually support players kind of just get this stuff more intuitively than other people, because I mean I kind of joke because it's like support players don't really have anything else to worry about, but they're just worrying about like what my team should be doing and what the enemy team is doing. But that's where like learning like the best ways how to ping people can be helpful, like or like I type a lot because I'm a pretty quick typer, so usually I can type like, oh, if I'm recalling, then I can type out like flash timers, and then I can type like, oh, they're playing for this objective, so be careful this side.
sometimes I'm typing out flash timers because that's obviously quite helpful,
Mm-hmm.
but most often I just turn off my chat because I
Oh yeah,
actually
see,
can't.
that's a really good
Like,
strat too, uh, especially if like people are tilting or like stuff like that. I personally find that typing helps me to communicate, and then I think I've gotten pretty good about pinging people, but I think communication is like really important from support, because like your main job is like team play versus the enemy's team play. So I personally think like the more you can communicate, the easier it is.
okay, one thing that like is kind of difficult, I guess, would be when like say all the towers are down except the inhibitor towers on both
Oh yeah,
sides, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then like Baron's coming up or something in like 4 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no Drake,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just like, where am I meant to be placing my vision?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of weird because the map's so open, and it depends. Obviously, depends if you're like losing or winning, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like if I'm losing, what am I meant to be doing? Like, where am I going to be placing my vision?
Mm-hmm.
Given that Baron's going to be coming in like 3 4 minutes, how
So
do I want to be playing that?
so it's kind of like and I think I actually think core JJ talks about this in one of his videos, like the way he thinks about like vision or like map pressure and stuff. But it's all basically about like your idea about how you're playing the game is the same throughout the game, no matter what the map state is. Like you're thinking about the same ideas. It's like I want to keep my teammates safe. I want to look for plays in the areas that I have control over, and then you want to deny the enemies from doing the same thing. It just so what changes is when you're in a losing position, the area that you have control over is much smaller, right?
Hmm.
So basically, you're trying to push this area, this cone that you can work in as much as possible, to let your team have more area where they can make plays in. But it's obviously very hard. The easiest thing that I can say is you have to just always go with waves, because waves are like what kind of keeps you safe. So like,
Sure. They give you a vision,
mm-hmm.
and yeah.
And then it's like there's skill shots that can just are much harder to hit in a minion wave because the minions just run at enemy champions. But like usually like the number one priority is still you want to try to keep a ward here, because obviously they'll eat the wave as soon as they come back. But you want to try to
Okay.
keep some sort of vision, And then instead of like it being deep vision and then like the secondary objective vision, it should be deep vision and then the secondary like your own quadrant. Like pick a quadrant of the map,
Defense. Yeah.
and then you're trying to play defense vision.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that when the enemy jungle support has like if they both have sweepers, then I often find myself like getting sweeped out, right?
Over
So I
and
just
over and
get no
over.
vision done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really depressing.
And then Umbral Glaive is like kind of super meta right now, so it's even harder to get
I
vision
fucking
done.
hate that item. It's such a disgusting item.
So, I mean, I don't know if this is something like you've probably realized this, but especially in losing positions. So the way I find myself playing the game is I literally respawn. It's 2 control wards, 3 trinket charges, or 4 trinket
Yeah.
charges, whatever. And so I'm
Yeah.
doing ward, whatever I can, and then control ward. So that's 4 pieces of vision that I've just dropped, and then I'm immediately recalling and getting wards back up.
Yeah, I know that's something Core does, and then that's something he talks about, like tempi and like vision tempi. That's quite important. But I don't think I do enough of that. Like I'm not sure if I consider my vision and then consider the enemy support vision and then I just like reset because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have an advantage if I reset here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's quite difficult
So
too.
especially in this kind of losing area. So let's just say arbitrarily we're picking this quadrant to defend. So like the kind of instruction manual that you'd follow is so you're gonna respawn. It's gonna be like this word, this word, this word, this word, or whatever the word is. Like it doesn't really matter the paths. But like you think about like what makes sense to word, like here, here, or something, and then you
Yeah, sure.
immediately recall, and then you run back mid and do the exact same thing. And every time you do it, like they're probably like fighting to keep it clear or whatever. But every time you do it, you're trying to push this line like a little bit further and a little bit further, right? So it's like you're gonna walk down mid, you're gonna recall, you're gonna walk down mid, or you're gonna recall, you're gonna walk down mid over and over. And then the reason that I think that like so a lot of people don't do that, but like if you think about it as a support, that's your only job at that point in the game. Depending on what champ you're playing. Like if you're playing a hook champ, then okay, you're kind of looking for picks too. Or if you're playing a peel champ, it's much harder. Like because Janna like can't really face check the same way that other champs can. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, that's your only job. Your only job is to buy 2 control wards, bring your trinkets down here, and ward the area. Then buy 2 more control wards and try to push that line a little bit further every time. And you should be doing that nonstop until the next objective comes. And that's like how you protect your team.
Okay.
But obviously, so like that's the enemy support's doing the exact same thing, right? If they're playing right, but they have to
Yeah.
walk all the way. Kind of like a small piece of it is kind of like they talk about like I forget what the word is, but like you know in like medieval sieges or whatever, you're trying to run the enemy out of resources, but like
War of Attrition, I think it's
yeah,
called.
yeah. So like if you think about it, their support, if they're trying to fight for your tower, has to drop 3 wards. They're trying to do the exact same thing. So they'll do ward, and then the 2 control wards, or their two control ward charges, whatever. But then when they do the same pattern, they have to walk all the way from their base to your base to get the same influence, and you have a shorter path. So that's something that helps defensive warding too, just because like it's like trinket based.
It takes less time to get there.
Exactly. They only have 3 charges. You only have 3 charges. Like that type of idea.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's like small like obviously you want to be in the winning position more than the losing position, but it's all about the same ideas. Like you're trying to fight for vision because you're trying to get like a quadrant of the map back, and that's true whether you're winning or it's true whether you're losing.
I think I'm like really good at establishing vision when I'm winning. I think I really like, I know how to set up picks and like if I'm winning, the jungle is lit up like a Christmas tree, right?
I bet you are, especially because you're playing Thresh. It's like a pick
But
map, so you're probably really good at
and so it's just it's really easy like just hitting like hooks like max range hooks. They just walk into it and you're just like, whoops, game's over. But then I'm telling you, like losing is quite bad.
So
As in, it's quite difficult for me to.
I will say, so a lot of that, it might not even be your gameplay. Like, if you understand all these things about warding, so part of it is also Thresh is kind of really hard to play from behind because, like, if their champs are all tank, if their front line is super tanky and, like, you land a hook, then it doesn't
Yeah,
really
sometimes
matter.
it's just it's team comp dependent, right? And it's just there's no counterplay. Like actually, there's no counterplay. You just lose the game.
Because there are
And but
champs.
that's something I have trouble as well. Like I have trouble identifying like team comps, that kind of thing, right? If you just go on the OPgg and you just ask me about this game and you're just like, oh, what's your win condition? I'm gonna be like, fuck, I don't know. Like it's really, I'm not sure how to think about the game in like
Oh,
as a whole,
I
right?
see. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, so there's a difference between like, because if you play mostly Thresh, like usually your win condition is so the early game becomes really important because Thresh snowballs really hard and is really oppressive when ahead. From behind, it's maybe a little harder. So like that will also always naturally be part of like your win con. It depends on
Mm.
like the team, like your champions. I mean, generally speaking, you can figure out like which champs are like strong champs, early, mid, late, right?
Yeah, it's kind of obvious. Like at least
Yeah,
big
yeah.
champ, like fucking Yasuo strong champ, like whatever.
Something that's
Vayne.
really obvious is like 80 AP damage split is usually pretty obvious.
Yeah, like tanks.
Yeah, exactly. Whether they have tanks, um,
Like
all these things like play into good
if you look at
champs.
the Soraka game,
Hmm.
I think that's a shit team comp, right? I don't know. It looks like really. Oh my god, it's fuck. But if you look at the Soraka game, it was kind of doomed from the beginning because we lost early,
I'm trying to
and
refresh that real fast. You're talking about this game, right?
yeah, that one.
Okay.
And I thought that we can like I don't know clear waves with Victor or something, and just like do okay, even though we've
Hmm.
got like a no left. Because
Hmm.
I'm playing Soraka, so I was like, oh yeah, we outscaled Trash, whatever.
Hmm.
But then we just lost the game because I don't know, Django lost too hard.
Yeah,
Mid lane ended up roaming a bunch. I don't know.
I'll say like so you can even go like lane by lane, matchup by matchup. Like, so Tryndamere, especially when ahead, like you're never gonna win this lane back from Trin split pushing. Like Trin is a win con by himself. Um, LeBlanc is really annoying late game. And then Callista's like useless from behind. So I mean, I would say like objectively, your team comp is probably worse when behind. And so it's gonna be hard. But like your team comp's early game is probably better. I don't know. I mean, like some games are just hard, right?
Yeah,
Because some games
it's
you're just gonna
true.
draft shitty comps and stuff. But it kind of goes back to like the draft. It's like number one priority is like make sure your team has a front line, or like, and then make sure your team has good like 80 AP splits. Make sure your team has engage, stuff like that.
Okay.
Because if you
Do you
do
ever
that,
play
then
like
usually your comp will be good. And if your comp's good,
yeah
then usually you can come back, or you have a chance.
comebackable? The thing I hate is when we play in like when we get outscaled and we lose early. I think that's just doomed. I'm just like if you're losing to like a Cassadin like level pre-level 6 or something,
Yeah,
it's just not fun.
but
Or like Vladimir is just a
mhm.
disgusting champion. I think Vladimir is actually one of the most broken champions in the game.
I wouldn't disagree. I don't know if. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
It's fucking. I play. I started. It got to the point where I was just like, okay, fuck that champion. I'm gonna go play it myself. And so I went and played like I don't know, like 60 games of that or something. Disgusting, absolutely disgusting champion.
See, the thing for me is, I don't know if I want to call him overpowered, but he's one of those champs where if you're on the enemy team, like let's say they pick the flat top and you're the support or bot lane player, like you can't do anything to influence that lane. And if he gets ahead of
No, you
you,
can't.
then he just rolls over your team. So it feels like anti fun because it's like I can't do anything about it.
And obviously, the champion's got like weaknesses, and
Yeah, yeah.
if the top lane jungle play like properly, they can not let him get out of control. But it's really oppressive, I think, especially in soloQ.
But
Same thing with like set, just overtuned, and
oh yeah.
yeah, I can rant about like Darius right now, like Cass, disgusting champions. Eve, oh my god, I fucking hate Eve.
Oh yeah. So, but I
What jungle
guess
camps?
to touch on like, so hopefully I've like shared some of like just how I think about the game like with
Yeah,
teammates in support position. Um, and then like thinking about like how like people's win cons. So like I kind of thought about this recently, but like so the mid lane and the top lane and the AD carry are like the three roles where like they can actually carry the game. Like those
yeah.
are the win cons. So like you're trying to
Mm.
get them ahead. But then the jungler and the support, they're not win cons, but their whole job is to get people ahead. So I think like the jungle and support role is like the hardest carry early game positions because you dictate like which lanes get ahead, within reason. But that's how I think about the game. So, but then the point of that is like, So then there are some games where it's just like, oh, you get your win cons ahead, but you can't do anything about them actually like taking the lead forward. But like you just try to not tilt off that or stuff because it's like over 100 games, over 200 games, usually you'll win
Yeah,
more than you
it
lose.
makes a difference. Yeah, no, I know. It's 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 a lot about like mental as well.
Oh, for
Because
sure, for sure.
if you decide it's lost like 10 minutes in, then it's not really, and then
Hmm.
you just lose from like not no reason, but you lose where you could have tried at least to win, right?
Hmm. I think it's
I don't
all about
know.
like the probabilities, cause but then that's why I love to stress like the small map stuff, cause it's like I found that it's the like doing those small little missions. Like if there's one takeaway that I think, because I think you already understand like all of this, like the vast majority of this, but like the one actionable takeaway is like try to think about these roams as little missions,
Okay,
and that
and just
over
have a
time,
purpose like every time.
the more often you can do these and the more successful you can do these, like it's gonna lead to like
Would you ever award in lane like trinket ward first trinket
oh
ward?
yeah,
Would you ever
it
award a
depends on
bush?
matchups. I've been finding I do that more and more. And the reason I've been finding I do that more and more is because I've been finding that I just usually have an excess of trinkets, like just more wards than I need. Um, but that everybody's taking mid TP and top TP now, and so like even having the deep bush warded, or even like sometimes when I back, I'll drop like this ward. It's kind of like analogous to the mid ward where you just drop it like outside their tower, deep in the
Yeah,
lane.
yeah.
Even if they see you doing that, yeah, like, sure they can sweep it, but if they leave that up, that's like so much pressure because everybody is taking TP nowadays, and it's huge pressure. So I don't do it just to have bush control, but I do it because it's huge TP
For
pressure.
TP, yeah, I that's something I need to like get better at doing as well. Is being more mindful of TP and
Mm-hmm.
like not dying as much to PB gangs because it can happen. Like like once you figure it out, like once it happens enough times to you, you're just like, what the fuck's going on? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just dying to TP gangs, right? Like, how? What can I do about that? And you can like I never like not never, but I rarely sweep lane because I'm usually like roaming mid and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna be sweeping like river and like jungle or whatever. So I haven't got the sweeper for mid, and then my pink's usually gonna be like try or river somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get TP'd on quite a lot as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. I guess to actually answer your question, so the lane wards are usually that's a just I think about them as TP wards, not like bush vision wards. And then I guess the
Okay.
second part of that is the deeper you can get that, the better the TP. But also the deeper you get it, like if you find you're in a losing matchup and you're pushed in the lane like all the time, then like if you have this ward, then at least that's like enemy jungle vision. So like that's the second half. So they can never lane gank you if you have like some sort of vision here.
Yeah, yeah. And then one thing, like one last thing would
Mm-hmm.
be um forcing like even man fights or like potentially, let's say it like that, potentially even man fights when you're losing. I think is something like need to like work on. As in, say, like to give an example, say we're 2v2 bot, right, and then the jungler just comes to gank,
Mm-hmm.
but then we haven't seen the jungler, or we just don't know where the jungler is for some reason, and then if we get counter ganked there, we will lose the game,
Mm-hmm.
like right there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'm trying to get better at, but I'm not doing like I'm not too conscious of.
Yeah,
I
so
would
it's
say
like,
right now.
do I bother calling the jungler and like overextending? Because it's like I don't want to lose the game right here.
Yeah, I think you could just ping it off or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so obviously it depends on like game state and map state. The easiest way is so it's gonna be really hard when you're losing the game. But like that second mission, which is super important, is if you've managed to win vision, then that just
You should
helps
know if.
facilitate
Yeah,
like so many
yeah. Okay.
plays. So that's why I think that's like the primary mission, because like vision wins this lane, it wins this lane, it wins the whole map because it's how you
It
play
wins
the
top
jungle.
lane as well because it's obvious. Like if the
Yeah,
jungler's not bot side, then it's top
yeah.
side, right? So
So like
yeah,
that's what I see as the most important. Like the more games where you can somehow get this vision will be games where you win the jungle matchup, or at least you do a large part in helping. And this is like the super early game jungle matchup. But you can also like keeping this up as long as possible throughout the entire game obviously helps. But like it's super impactful when like the jungler is actually doing like paths like, oh, this camp and ganking and stuff where the time spent is really important.
okay. So like, what do you think? 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 Like, what do you like, obviously it's a difficult question to answer, but what do you think like separates and like like challenger supports, right, from like diamond supports? And it's going to be a lot of things, and it's going to be a lot of small things, right? But
It's
like,
like
how
a
can
lot
you
of things.
like build up? You know what I mean? Like, how can you actually improve?
So the interesting thing is, I can even tell you what separates master supports from D1 supports from
Sure,
D2
sure,
supports, because
sure.
I spent a lot of games. I think the most I ever played and the highest I climbed was this past season. So like, yeah, I peaked in season 9. But during that,
Where did you peak?
it was D1 like 75 LP. I almost got masters.
Damn. Okay. I've been to D1 promos like a couple of times,
Okay.
but yeah, that I haven't got past the D1. Promos.
It's funny because like, so I'm not like a top player by any means. I'm just like, I'm like comfortably D2. I don't have to try very hard to stay D2. But like, if you think about it, there's a lot of players. Like, then you have to go D1, you have to go Masters, you have to go Grandmasters. There's so many tiers of players who are just infinitely better than me. And I already know, like, this is already so much knowledge that like even going like from me to like down a division, just people don't know. So you can think about like just this amount of knowledge is just stuff that all these supports above us already know automatically. What I
Mm.
found that I got punished for the most, like the higher I got, it was lane matchups, like knowing the matchup, playing the matchup correctly, like
I've got that
injuries.
where I like that was last season
Mm-hmm,
where I was playing in like D1 D games,
mm-hmm.
and some games I would actually get fucking shit on, like no joke, like the spacing, everything just, and I'm just like, what the fuck's going on? Like what's going on? I, and but then again, it's like once that happens to me, I can like kind of go back and see why am I trolling? Like what am I actually meant to be doing? But then if that never happens, then you're just never gonna find out. I don't know.
So I kind of
Like,
yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I had a bit of a funny story a quick story to tell about that. So I peaked. I said D1 75 LP somewhere around there. I took like a 3 or 4 week break last season after that, where I just went on vacation and I wasn't playing the game at all. But I came back and I lost, I think 30 out of like 35 games of the next six I played,
fuck
and
me.
every single one of those, like all the way down to like D4. And like, so a lot of it was, yeah, I tilted out of my mind, but a lot of it too was every single game I'd lose, like I'd get punished for like lane mistakes really hard. um so it's like small stuff like that, where so that's the biggest thing I sucked at, because I think I'm pretty good. And most supports, generally speaking, are pretty good at out of lane stuff because they're thinking about like objective control and like map movements and vision and stuff. But that's where I found that like knowing the lane matchups, knowing when your windows to go in, and applying pressure in lane was like the biggest thing for me.
Mm, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. League is mostly about like knowing when your
Mm-hmm.
champion is strong and like knowing damages and that kind of thing. Bot lane is so much more complex because like you've got fucking two people trying to fight and then both of them have flashes and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like what's going on.
And then you can
But
imagine like
yeah,
usually supports don't get punished for mechanical mistakes, but like the higher you go, supports actually do like have better
the
and better
sports,
mechanics and
yeah,
stuff.
shit on you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Like right now, so like if I queue, actually I'm not gonna queue up right now because my Wi-Fi is dog shit or like the servers is dog shit, whatever. But if I go into a game right now, like you can just tell like everyone's kind of trolling. Like they're not trolling obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not like playing their champion to their limit, right? And so it's kind of like you go into a game and then everyone's just like fucking playing like dog shit, kind of. I don't know. And you can get away with like a lot of things, but then
Yeah.
the higher you go, you like that's what I like walked into it. I just got stumped a bunch of times. I was just like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we playing the same game? Because we're playing the same game, right? Like they're not playing like a newer version of League or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
It's really mind. I don't know if it's like demoralizing, but it's like really it makes me really demoralizing to see like just people punishing you for mistakes that you don't even realize are mistakes. Um, but like so I had the most Rakan games, and like Rakan is probably like my best champ. But I remember just on the note of being punished for like stuff like that. There's so many games where it was the Leona meta back then when I was losing, or like when I lose games at Rakan, it's like the moment you miss one W, or like you miss one skill shot, it's always W on Rakan. But like the moment
Yeah.
you throw a W, like it was super hard for me to hit W's on ADs. But like the moment I'd miss that, it's like I always get double flashed on. It was so crazy. It happened to me like 5 or 6 games in a row, where it's just like knowing that that's a window. It's like the moment Rakan's W is down, you can just double flash and get a kill. Like it's stuff like that that was really mind blowing to me.
For me, let's think. For me, it's just like the the idea that your Thresh hook is just not guaranteed because they can always flash it is something like, and then so you end up losing all in.
Mm-hmm.
You in theory should be winning because they just flash it.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory you're actually losing them, but then in default she flashes because it's like, why would you flash, right? Say flash for next game.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that people can flash skill shots was fucking mind-boggling to me.
Oh yeah.
Genuinely, I know it sounds really stupid, right? It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But they actually flash hook every single time when it matters, and you just die. You just die. You just die all the time.
Or you
You
get to,
Q,
like
they flash, you die.
it's the exact same thing. So I mean, I'm just speaking as a Rakan player now, but like if the AD has flash, you will never hit them like with your like people say like RW is like really fast or R flash W is really fast. But it's like even with that, you'll never hit an AD with that if they have flash up, unless you have really good vision control and stuff. But yeah, people's mechanics, especially AD carries, their mechanics get insanely good.
Yeah, that's one thing. It's like the higher you go, it seems like everyone around me plays so much better. Like I remember playing with this Twisted Fate, and I was genuinely playing with like Faker or something. I was just like, who is this guy, right? Like, who is this guy? How am I, like I'm fucking sat there. I'm like missing my hook. I'm trying to fucking do whatever, and then this guy's just smurfing, and everyone like, what the fuck? Like, why are we in the same game? Like, how does this work?
But I will also say that the other side of that is so at the same time it's like especially like mid laners and AD carries, like their mechanics are insane, yeah. But the reason they're at the same elo is because they're deficient in the areas where like as support players stand out, which is usually being map awareness, objective control, and like vision control. Like the vast majority of the time, like mid laners suck at that, and AD carries suck at that because they don't really worry about that at all. So it's not that like they're just like better players. It's just like the game that they play is a completely different game than the game that like support players play or the games that junglers play.
Yeah, I've never climbed like high on like top lane or AD, so I can't really say. But I can like imagine. I've probably failed when I was higher up,
I
but
think something interesting. I mean, this is like a little bit tangentially related, but have you ever played the flex ladder at all? I know people like
yeah,
joke about
yeah,
the flex
yeah.
ladder like it's just
But
garbage and nobody cares about it.
I don't really care about it. As
Yeah.
in, I'm playing in like gold dollar play games or whatever.
So what I've noticed about the flex ladder, like if you're ever interested in testing like, or just like people use it to fuck around when they don't want to risk their solo queue elo.
Yeah, pretty much.
But what I've noticed is that the equivalent, like, so I climbed D1 flex and D1 solo queue last season. I climbed both ladders and I played flex
Okay.
pretty much solo for the most part, or sometimes I'd queue with like 2 or 3 mans. But the difference between the flex ladder isn't bad. Just usually people's mechanics on the flex ladder aren't nearly as good as on the solo queue ladder, but their map awareness is way like infinitely better. And
Yeah, because they're like on comps or whatever. Everyone's like talking.
they're on
It
comms,
feels more
and
like
even
a
if they're not on
5-5.
comms, I feel like the players are just more aware. Like the types of players who play the flex queue just have
Sure,
better map
sure.
awareness and like poor mechanics. But
No,
that was really
like
obvious to me. It's like wow, it's
we've all seen it. Like you see the jungler top side, or like you see the jungler somewhere, and then the mid laner just dies to the jungler like 20 seconds later. You're like, what?
Yeah, it's like
Like,
you can have
how
great
is this
mechanics,
possible?
but if you're dying to that, it doesn't matter. You lose the game.
But yeah, all right, man. It was great talking to you. I don't want to like hold you up too much.
Oh yeah, for sure. Thanks for stopping us.
It's just
'Cause,
getting
yeah, I
quite
get
late.
carried away sometimes.
It's all right. Um,
if you play any other games in the future, like feel free, and you have any questions or stuff, like feel free to shoot me a message. Like,
I'm gonna I'm gonna see if I can get like some
oh, before I
possibly record
forget,
some games.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
before I forget, so there's a bunch of resources on the summers on the SS page. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to look through them, but I think in particular the core videos, like I think you've already seen them, but like the
I
core
have
core
seen,
video
yeah,
series is
yeah.
like absolutely amazing. Um, Especially the first few ones, where it talked about, so the laning one was really important, and I think the vision control one was really important.
Yeah, I think the laning thing with like the just applying like pressure with your
Hmm.
presence is like just so big.
So
It's something I've done like passively before, but now I'm doing it consciously, and I'm trying to like literally just sit on top of their range,
mhm.
and it's making them click into me, and it's so funny.
That's 100% like how I describe it. Like it was always something I did. I just because it's like that's how you normally play, but I never realized I was playing like that's why I was doing it. And then once you make it conscious, you do it way more frequently and you do it like way more better. But like that's like a
Mm.
huge improvement. I found this. So this is Lil Pally made this, I think, and I actually personally really like
Yeah,
this
I've seen that. I've seen that, but
because I play a lot of these champs. But I don't know. It might be just something to share with you if you're interested in taking a look
I
at.
think I have it.
Okay.
Support. I must have it somewhere.
Obviously, so like you can only fit so much information on like two sentences. But if you're ever
Yeah,
like in a pinch, it's like in like Thresh's band or whatever. I don't know what you go to in Thresh's band, but like
I used to play Morgana quite a bit.
okay, knowing how to play some of these matchups is like
Yeah,
helpful sometimes.
I mean, it just kind of makes sense. Like you look at your champion, it's like, is it all in? Is it trade? Is it like
Exactly.
sustain? Whatever.
Exactly.
And then it's like, what am I meant to do in lane? Am I meant to trade all in? Whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah.
But this is one of the most complete kind of like guides that I've ever seen
Mm-hmm.
because usually people don't make like content that
I think he's
seriously.
I think he's quite good at support, right? Like obviously he's challenger, but then sometimes he's like trolling, and then he's just like, "What the fuck is my team doing?" But obviously, like all of us are like guilty of that, so I
Hmm.
can't really blame him. But yeah,
But yeah, those are the last two. This and then the core JJ videos are the last two things I would like super recommend are like good resources to look over because like they can explain things way better than I can
I
explain.
I I wish, right? The only thing I wish was that LS did some more support coaching videos, because
Oh, there's no
I'd love to
support
see.
content right now.
I know what's going on. Like,
I think there's been
just
the most
fucking.
jungle content, interestingly enough, with like pathing and like I think jungle has been kind of a popular role recently
Yeah. I guess if I look in
for
like
content
my,
creation at least. I don't know if like a lot of people are playing the role.
you get mid lane, you get top lane. It's quite popular roles. But yeah, supports is like quite starved. I find as well.
I've never found too many like because it's kind of like the content for mid like solo lanes and stuff is just kind of like oh you play the matchup this way and then like mechanics and stuff. But then there's a lot of like interesting things that you'd actually have to think about, in my opinion, like as a jungler and as a support player. So maybe that's why the content gets made for it. But I don't know.
I, Pro guys and the other one, what's it called? Skill Cap. Yeah, Skill Cap. I know they do some like support content every now and then.
Ah, okay. I'll have to check it
So
out sometime.
they're not bad in terms of like their videos are usually well researched, and it's good players like I believe it's like Loco Doco. I
Mm-hmm.
think Core maybe even could be one like playing for pro guys or um, the other one. So they're like kind of, but they do support content like every now and then, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're, they're they're trying to provide like an overview of what this site is gonna
Mm-hmm.
give to people.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely keep it up. And then if you have any other questions, like always feel free to just shoot me a quick question or something.
Sure, man. Sure. If I ever catch myself hinting, I'll be sure to
So you gotta
hit
take a
you up.
deep breath and stop queuing up solo queue. It's like anti-tilt and stuff. But
Oh man, fucking soloQ. Sometimes I just lose. I tilt the most when I make a mistake, right?
mm-hmm.
Because I know I've played it fucking
Mm-hmm.
shit. I just cost the game or whatever. So I'm like, fuck's sake, not again.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for chatting with me. I'm gonna go because I got some other stuff to take care of. But
Yeah, no worries, man. No worries. Same here. Great talking to you. Have a good day, and
okay, awesome.
stay safe.
Hey, you too.
Wash your hands. Wash your hands. 20 seconds.
Okay, true, very true. All right, take
How's
care.
the situation?
So I'm in California. I'm in SoCal. So I think in the U.S. it's been a little. I mean, because I'm assuming you're in Europe, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so I think in the U.S. it's